Welcome to Every Woman Has a Story on WEBN. My name is Moushien, and today on our show we have Taisha Akins, a mother who lost her son to gun violence. Taisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I know that you have lost at least 15 people in your life that have been murdered by a gun.
Yes.
Your son, Chris, being one of them.
Yes.
Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, it was all of a sudden. It was unexpected. It happened out of nowhere. It was a terrifying situation that affected not only myself but my children and those around me and people that you would least expect that it affected. He was in and out of situations, but that's normally what kids they do. But regardless of anything with Chris, I always was his backbone. I would support him whether he made good decisions or bad decisions. And like I said, it was very unexpected because I just seen him not even maybe 20 minutes prior to that. And Chris is usually the child that I always take with me everywhere because I never wanted him to get in so much trouble. But I just remember the phone call, and I almost left my daughter. Wherever I was at, I almost left my daughter to run to where he was at. And I just got there, and I couldn't believe it until I went to the hospital. And that's the story about that day.
So take us through that day. I know Chris was 17 years old.
Yes.
What were you doing? You said that you were with him 20 minutes before. Take us through that day.
Well, prior to that, earlier that day, he got up, he went to school, he did everything that he was supposed to, and I was running around with my other children, and I just so happened to drop my other son home, and I seen Chris. I drove in front of my house, I seen him. He's always smiling. He gave me the tightest hug, and I said, all right, Mommy. He was like, Mommy, I love you. Then I left. As a matter of fact, I was going to the chiropractor, but that's when I got the phone call, not even 20 minutes after that, and I was just frantic.
And who called you? Was it the police?
My son.
Your son called you.
And instantly I knew something was wrong because I've never heard my son have this tone of voice ever. He was crying, and my son never really cried since he was a baby.
And this is your older son?
Yes.
Okay, and what's your older son's name?
I don't want to put his name up there. I'm sorry.
No worries
sorry.
at all. No, not at all. And I know that you have a daughter also.
Yes, Samadhi. Yes.
Okay, and was she involved in this day? Did she find out the same day, or?
She was with me.
She was with you.
So I had to rush down to where the accident happened, and she had to witness everything. She witnessed all the tape, her brother's belongings on the floor. She knew what was happening, but it didn't register in her mind as fast as it did mine. She kind of dealt with it a lot better than I did.
And what were some of the reactions of family members, of people around you that were also finding out about Chris's death?
I just know that I think the word traveled so much that I couldn't even get it out there. I called maybe my mother, and I called two of my cousins. They was screaming. They didn't believe me. They couldn't really understand me because I was shaking over my words. But a majority of people had to have found out through the media because my bell was just ringing. People kept coming and coming. I don't even remember all of the people that was there.
And what was going through your head that day when you got that phone call from your son? What went through your head? What thoughts were going through your head? Because you had just been with him 20 minutes before.
Yes, my first thing I said, it was like, what? I wanted to go crazy because I never leave him. It was a lot of anger, a lot of guilt. I was confused because all my kids was hurt at once. My first thought was to who did this to my son? I'm gonna go crazy. Bring me to who did this to my son. I just wanted to get out who did this to my son. I was ready for whatever was coming my way when that happened. But after time went on, I have to be the bigger person and being the mother that I am and put my other kids first. So I couldn't channel my energy into doing something to someone who did that to my son. But those were my very first thoughts.
And what were your son's words, your oldest son, when he called you?
Ma, they shot Chris. He didn't say that he died or anything like that. But as a mother, you kind of get that feeling. And I just knew. I knew something wasn't right. And I just did what I had to do. I had to go down there. I had to, view the body. Nobody wanted me to do it. Everybody told me, if you can't do it, we'll do it. But that's my son. So I had to, and I wanted to do everything. Mm-hmm. I wanted to put the funeral together. There was just no taking me out of the situation. I had to do it myself.
And did you go down to identify his body alone, or did your two other kids come with you?
They came, but I wouldn't let my daughter in. I didn't want my daughter to see it at that time. It was so much commotion, and it was at the beginning of the process, and everybody was just angry, chaotic, and it was just a lot of commotion down at the hospital, and I try to keep that away from my daughter as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you're wearing that lovely shirt with
Yes.
Chris's face on it, along
Yes.
with two other close, very people to you that were also killed by a gun. Could you tell us about the shirt that you're wearing?
My nephew Tasman and my sister Raina. She wasn't killed by a gun, but she was bludgeoned to death in her own home. And my nephew was killed execution style as well.
And how long ago did these deaths take place?
2 years apart. My sister, I believe, was about 4 years now. My nephew maybe about 5 or a little more than that.
So in addition to your family members on your shirt, there are also even more people that you've lost to gun violence.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
My god brother, it's been friends that I've grew up with, it's been my friends that I hang around with. A friend lost her baby's father, or the father of her child. It's been cousins. My sons lost a lot of friends through gun violence. And just these 3 people have truly affected my life.
So this issue, this topic of gun violence obviously hits home for you.
Yes.
When someone brings up the issue of gun violence, what are some of the initial thoughts that come to your head?
I feel like it's sickening now. It's tiring, like back and forth, everybody losing their child to gun violence. It's annoying. It's just very frustrating to keep watching the news, and it's always somebody losing their son or just their child in general because somebody done shot them. I think it's sickening, and I've really never paid so much attention to it as I do now because I feel their pain, and I don't wish that on anybody. It's horrible.
Looking back on that day that Chris was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
do you ever say to yourself, run through that day and say, I could have done something to prevent this? Chris could have been with me.
All the time.
Do you put the blame on yourself?
All the time, because I've always had him with me. That was the one child. He was such a mommy's boy anyway. Like one thing with myself and my kids, we have a good relationship. Regardless of whatever goes on, we have a real good relationship. And I always say to myself, if I had stayed there 10 minutes longer or made him get in the car with me, I could have prevented this. But then I believe in God, so I believe things happen for a reason and I have no control over it. So if I would have changed that, what was destined to happen, for all I know, it could have happened to my other son. So I try not to put the blame on myself anymore because I know I didn't do it. But as a mother, it does weigh heavy on your heart.
What were the days like after you found out, after you had to go identify his body? What happened? I know that you had to plan his funeral. Take me through the days after.
Oh, it's a lot of work. It was more so my days, I was a lot of antisocial. I didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want no one to ask me any questions. I couldn't sleep. A lot of anxiety. A lot of anger, just a lot of anger was circulating through my household. I had a daughter that was broken because that was the brother that always paid her so much attention, help her with her homework, or took her to the store. They was just so close. And then I had an older son that lost his everything, his best friend, his little brother. So I had to think about what they was feeling. And it took a long time to put the pieces back together in my household. My son Chris was loved by many people. So to this day, it's still a lot of frustration, still a lot of anger, and it's still not, a complete burden lifting off your shoulder. I don't think that my heart would ever be able to heal from a situation like that, but I am able to focus and still maintain and do what I have to do out here as a mother and a person.
Tell me about the kind of person that Chris was. I see a smile coming to your face every time I bring up his name.
That was my baby.
Well, what did he do that could just bring a smile to your face? What are some of those things that you absolutely adored about him?
His loyalty for his loved ones. He will do any and everything for anybody that he knew that actually had genuine love for him. He would be the kid that, I come home, my food would be in the microwave, or everything he had, he would share it. He would be the kid that would give you his shirt off his back and he'll walk outside barefoot in the snow. Or he would be the kid that would wake up 6 o'clock in the morning to go shovel neighbors' driveways for them or go to the store for them. He was so caring and loving. He had a real good side that not many got to witness.
And what was the dynamic and relationship like in the house with you, with his siblings?
Well, with Chris, him and his brother, they was very, very close. They separated themselves a lot because they was more, had more in common. But as far as his sister, he would sit down with her, do homework, watch TV, play games with her. He'll come, always check on me to make sure I'm okay. He was always outside a lot though. He would love walking in the rain, just sitting. We would always have conversations in the rain. He was very bubbly. He was outgoing. He was a entrepreneur on the come up. He always tried to make 50 cents out of a quarter. He would just not quit. He wasn't a quitter at all.
And what were some of his aspirations or his future career plans that he had?
Well, I know he always used to want to make a name for himself. He wanted to own a candy store. I remember him talking about that growing up. He just wanted to be successful. He wanted his family to be okay. He didn't want us to have any worries. He didn't want us to have to go elsewhere for anything. He just wanted to take care of home and his brother.
Wow. So, and now tell me about yourself. I know that you had Chris at a very young age. You also have two other children. So can you tell me when you had these kids? And tell me about Taisha.
Well, I did start off as a young mother. I had my first son at 14. Nobody around me wanted me to do this, but I was determined. I knew I could do it. I had that already in my mind. I'm a single mother. I go to school. I do my arts and crafts on my downtime. I have a busy schedule with my daughter. She's into music a lot. She's in the Y, swimming, her drums, everything. So I also watch my granddaughter, so she keeps me busy as well.
Okay.
And that's it. Like I go around when I have the time. I might stop, see homeless people on the street, and if I cooked, I'll give them the food. I think things like that. Whatever I can do to help other people, that's what I spend most of my time doing.
What's a normal day like for Taisha? Take me through a regular Monday.
Monday, you give me the hardest day. Well, I get up 5:30 in the morning.
Okay.
I have to drive an hour to Boston to bring my daughter to school, and then I'm usually running around, helping my friends, be supportive to them, just taking care of everything that I have to take care of as far as either jobs that I have lined up, or I'm studying, or like I said, I'm with my granddaughter, and it all depends. it goes back and forth. Some days is not as hectic as other days.
What are you studying in school?
Communications and culture diversity.
Awesome. So going back to this topic of gun violence, what can communities do? What can families do to prevent things like what happened to Chris from happening again? This topic of gun violence, it takes place everywhere. We have the Trayvon Martin case that happened not too long ago. I mean, and the Trayvon Martin case is only one of those cases that just so happened to be publicized. But I mean, this is a reoccurring issue in communities and urban neighborhoods. What are some things that everyday people can do in order to prevent things like this from happening again?
Well, my most important thing, I think people need to pay attention to what goes on in the household. Don't stray away from your kids. You know, bond with your kids. Get to know your kids, because it's deeper than that. I mean, I feel like people that are committing this, they're either in fear of something, they're angry. I think something is going on other than what the media puts out there. I think you need to get deeper involved in the root of the situation, because you can put a ban on the guns, you can stricken the gun laws, but then we have knives. You know, people can get bludgeoned to death. So I think we need to really get involved with these people that are actually committing the crimes. Like, you'll go into some areas and people commit a crime and they get a lot of resources thrown at them. Like, we can help with this, we can help with that. But in our community, it's send them to jail. You know, without even trying to understand the situation. Like, okay, if somebody committed a crime, yes, you have to be punished for it, whatever the case may be, but they also need help as well. Something is going on with these people that they keep committing these murders, and it's sickening to keep listening to people's kids getting killed. It hurts me to see other people have to go through it, and now that I hear it, you know, if I see mothers that witnessed or went through the same thing, I give them a hug, because I really deeply feel their pain.
And do you know any other mothers that have gone through the same
Yes.
thing?
And I found out since I've been through the situation, I've come across more mothers that have been through it.
And what do you say to a mother who has experienced the same kind of loss that you have with Chris and with the rest of your family members and close people in your life who have been murdered by a gun? What kinds of words do you share with one another?
Well, with the mothers that lost their kids, the words that I share is, I know that other people send sympathy, but you really can't understand your pain unless you really walked in those shoes. So you can talk to one of us till you're blue in the face. There's nothing that really, I don't think, heals the heart. I think as a mother losing a kid, there's always something in life that you know you're gonna suffer from. So it's like, at the end of the tunnel, are you ever going to completely be happy? And I don't think that is, at least in my situation. I don't think you'll ever be truly happy, because you're always going to have that void. With me, I often wonder how my son would have looked right now at the age of 20. You know, because I always like, my son was so fine. Like, he was so fine. I would love to see how he would be as a grown man. But there's really not too much you can say to a mother that lost their child, because there's sometimes we don't want to hear it. You know, and sometimes we'll look at you and be like, how would you know? You know, you have to really be one that lost their child to really understand how the pain is. Like, you can feel it, but you can't go through it. And at night, there's mothers like myself, we couldn't sleep. You know, I know a lot of mothers that are still going through it, wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety, screaming, need somebody to come sit with them. And I know how that feels. It's terrible.
And what would you say to those people out there that may hear this story, come across the story in a newspaper, on a website, and say, you know, Chris is just another one of those people that have been killed by a gun. Why should people die every day? Why should we care about Chris? What would you say to those people that say things like that?
Well, I would probably be real ignorant. I'll be honest about that. But I would be ignorant, And at the end of the day, I would tell them I don't need them to care. That's my son. And regardless of what my son is labeled as or what they want to view him as, he was a son to me. I'm going to love my son still, regardless. And there's nothing nobody else can do. I don't expect anybody to go as hard for my son as I would anyways.
Absolutely.
That's my child. And I would tell them everybody has people in their family that make good or bad decisions. So before you judge my son, you have to turn around and view your own story. Because I'm sure in their families there are people that either been murdered, that are on drugs, alcoholics. So it's just like, don't judge my son if you don't know him.
Were there ever people who you may have come across that said he was probably just a gang member, or he got involved with some of the wrong things, with drugs, just another African American child killed by a gun?
Yes.
Because he was headed down the wrong path. You come across people like that?
I read it on websites and things like that.
How does that make you feel?
Angry. Like I spoke on it to the people. Like I left my comments. Then I was like, let me get off of this. But it makes you feel angry. Like, true indeed, there are kids that go down the wrong path. And like I said, we all have those in our families. I say this to police officers all the time. Like, you don't want anyone treating your child like that. It's one thing to do your job, but it's another thing to go overboard. And don't label my son. How are you going to give him a label that I didn't give him? Just because people hang around certain areas, they just label them as gang members. And I always say, what is a gang member? Because what is a gang member? These kids, people don't understand that it's like a 50-50. These kids have people out here trying to kill them. So some people might want to carry a gun for their protection. I understand both sides of the fence, but I think that it is wrong. Regardless of what we go through, I don't think anyone's child deserves to die.
Do you feel safe in your neighborhood? Do you feel safe when your kids are at school, when you drop your daughter off an hour away from your home, when you let her go out of your car and you say, hey honey, have a good day at school? Are you scared?
Always, but it's just not for guns, it's for all kind of violence. I'm always scared for my little daughter to get off and go to school, and that's why she's not on public transportation. I pick her up, I drop her off, but at the end of the day, you have to live your life. I can't live in the bubble. I have to put my faith in God and know that things happen for a reason. He has my best interests at heart, and I just pray. And I hope that I'm going to get to see my daughter by the end of the day.
And what about your son? Where is he at with all of this right now?
Of course, he's not comfortable with it, but he's very standoffish. So with him, you can't really talk about it. So I just leave it alone. I let him heal and deal with it on his own time. I can't force him to be something that he's not.
Community-wise, has the neighborhood that you've lived in tried to organize some sort of get-together so they can sort of open up this conversation on gun violence? Because in reality, it's one of those topics that people don't like to talk about. It's one of those things that people sort of like to put under the rug and say, we're not going to touch up on that. That makes me uncomfortable. So has there been any sort of community gathering or any kind of gathering where this conversation has been opened up and you've been invited to talk about it at all?
I know the Louis D. Brown Center, I know they do things like that, but this is really the first time I'm really starting to come out and talk. I haven't applied myself to any other groups or the organizations.
Okay.
I just pretty much want to deal with it on my own.
So why now? Why are you choosing this very moment to speak out about this issue?
I think so because I have more control of what's said about my son. I'm able to put the information out there versus I give someone information and they switch it up and create their own story of my son. And I'm a little more comfortable with talking about my son's my son being killed. I couldn't really do it at first. And I don't know, I guess God puts you in the right place at the right time.
And has this brought the rest of your family closer?
Definitely. We've always been a close family, though. We can not speak to each other for weeks, but when time of need comes, we're all there to support each other. I have a real good support system. My family is very well connected and bonded, so I don't have any issues with that at all.
You talked about you and your family coming together after this, and you also said when you see other mothers who have gone through the same thing that you understand that this is not something that you can simply get over.
No.
But what are some things that you and the rest of the mothers or families out there who have lost someone to gun violence do to move forward?
You have to stay busy. I try to avoid the situation. Sometimes I don't like to think about it. But I know you have to stay busy, stay around people, do what you like. Put a lot of your energy into things that you like to do. Because honestly, there really is no way that you can escape the thoughts. There's really no way. You can be at your happiest moment and just something just comes over you and you have that thought and you just break down. I mean, I've done it. I can be out in the club, I done dancing in the middle of the floor, and I just started crying because I heard a certain song. So it's like, it just comes. There's no escaping it. There's no comforting ways to get around it because it's a fact, it happened, and you have to live with it.
And you raised your children as a single mother.
Yes.
Tell me about that. There's a lot of single mothers out there that are raising their kids, and then, you know, when one of their children, like for example in your case, are killed to gun violence, a lot of people say, you know, she wasn't a good mother, or she must have not paid enough attention to her children. How does that make you feel, and what would you say to those people that also put those kinds of thoughts out there to the public?
How does it make me feel? It doesn't make me feel like anything because they don't know me. I really could care less about what anybody's views, points of views, opinions, anything are about me because I know me. I'm secure in my shoes and what I did as being a mother. I have schools, courts, or whatever you need to back that up, that I was a good mother since the age of 14. I know as an individual, I did everything that I was supposed to do with my children. And I wouldn't go back and change it for anything in the world. I'm proud that I did what I did with my kids. And at the age I am now, I'm happy I had them when I had them. My sons and I were able to really bond. We grew up as like siblings. It was exciting. There's always some trials and tribulations, but getting over them is what matters to me.
And what are some of your future plans, your career goals? What do you see in Taisha's bright future?
Hopefully owning one of these studios. Successful. I wanna hopefully one of these days I wanna have a homeless shelter. I want to help the homeless. I don't want to be one of those shelters that you're homeless and you have to come get in line for a bed or pay to stay here. I want to be able to help homeless get their life back where it needs to be. I want to help teenage moms that went through the same thing I've been through, domestic violence. I want to do a lot of things. I just want to be successful, and I'm hoping that's in the near future.
And I have no doubt in my mind that you will accomplish all of those things. Thank you so much, Taisha. I really appreciated having you here today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching Every Woman Has a Story on WEBN. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please email us at ewhastory@gmail.com. I'm Moushien.